Good morning. Welcome to those of you that are joining us via live streaming. It's a great day in the Lord. Folks down here are complaining a bit because it got down to 35. Well, maybe on 31 for some of us. But anyways, it's great to be together and a wonderful opportunity for us to continue these conversations about the Lord's Word being alive. And I'd ask you, just join me in a word of prayer, shall we? Jesus, you are called the Word made flesh, and that's a mystery that we will spend our lifetime exploring, and yet you've also given us the Scriptures. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for leading your instruments to put down the words for us to reflect upon, to memorize, and live by. And Lord, we ask that you bless this time, that our conversations would honor you, that we'd also, though, build trust in our relationships with each other, and be equipped for life. We commend all things to you in your precious name. The people of God said, Amen. All right, if you would, what I'd like you to do is, you might have it memorized. You might not. If you don't, go with me to page 1055, and on 1055 you're saying, Kevin, hey, Joe, do you have a spot picked out, Joe? There's room over here on this table, right over here. You got a place where you're going to go? You're going to go back there? Then go back there. All right, good. So page 1055, and so last week we put the verses 16 and 17 in our head. And again, some of us are still, trapped by our King James Version or New International Version. But let's see if we can, and you're welcome to, again, if you need to, you just read it off the page. I think I still struggle with getting the ESV, but let's try it together. John 3:16 and 17. For God so loved the world that he gave his one Son, whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world would be saved through him. All right, well, we're getting there. And I can't get past that only begotten Son thing, that's just in my head from a previous translation. We had conversations last week that resulted in quite a few conversations that I had this week. And I share that with you because clearly people's ears, people were engaged in them. And I'd like you to, if you were with us last week, to be able to just spend a few moments reflecting on either you can talk about the topic of those two websites that I had encouraged you to do some research on. One was He Gets Us, and then the other one, Love Has No Labels. You might talk about some of the conversations that we had at our tables that resulted in some, I thought important conversations for us to wrestle with. So I'm just going to give you a moment. I told you last week, because we kind of had to stop abruptly, that we would allow for a couple of minutes at the beginning of class this week to go back over it. For those of you that are new, and I'm looking around and seeing a lot are new or weren't here last week, don't sweat the small stuff. Just use the time well, and I'll be back to you after I get some food in my belly. All right. I'm going to give you about one more minute, and then we're going to bring it back together. And Steve has got to be in here somewhere. He'll be able, we want to share a few things. Okay, so let's bring it back, and again, because the conversations ended abruptly, I wanted to give opportunity. Sounds like I've heard a couple of tables dug in, and what I wanted to see is if there's anything that you want to ask by way of follow-up question, or if there's something that you want to share that you found out that you think the rest of the group should be aware of. So Steve's got the microphone. Anybody from their table have follow-up questions from last week? Yeah, all right, let's bring it over here. State your name. I very likely know you, but just for the benefit of everybody else.
Name is Greg. Who's behind the videos? I mean, who's the groups, and where are they financially supported? How are they paying the big bucks to get on NFL football commercial time?
Yeah. So if you happen to watch, I went to bed, so I missed the end of the Jacksonville game, but I saw, no? I'm talking about last night's game can you believe that team came back? That was crazy. So it looks like some of you were happy or not, I don't know. But bottom line is, right there, if you watch commercials, there was Jesus Gets Us commercial right in the middle of it. It was the new one. I was moving, so I didn't get the whole gist of it, but it was something about rejection, I think. Jesus gets rejection. He understands if you feel rejected. So the question that Greg asked is, who are the benefactors? And I have, first of all, they're two completely different movements. I've done some research trying to dig that up. Just for candidness, a lot of this is coming out of what I would call anonymous, philanthropic minded people in our country. One group are identifying themselves as Christians. And so if you go on the Jesus Gets Us website, you will actually have lots of opportunity to have follow-up connection beyond just the commercials. They have opportunities for prayer. They have opportunity for resources. They have opportunities for local connectivity. But they don't tell you, they make it very clear we are not aligned with any church, that we are independent, and they are trying to introduce America to Jesus. The other, Love Has No Labels, has a remarkable list of corporate sponsors. Love Has No Labels, many of the agencies, banks with whom you might participate are funding Love Has No Labels. That's the best I can do with it. It's a great question. Any other follow-up questions to last weekend?
Could I add one thing? The Love Has No Labels, video is put out by the Ads Council.
Yes, thank you.
If I remember, Greg may know better than me, but I think that's like a professional organization of advertisers, and a lot of times their product or their advertisements are put out as public service announcements. But I don't think this would be the case in this. I'm sure this is a paid
one. Okay. Other questions or comments? Back here to Bruce, and then we'll work our way around to Al. But just because I said your name, you can say it yourself, because clearly I don't pronounce people's names correctly all the time.
Bruce.
Woo! I got that one.
Bruce. You got it. So could you once more go through your statement about quit tying love to morality?
Yeah.
Because Brenda and I we discussed that on the way home from Bible study last week.
Oh, yes. Believe me, that comment has received a whole lot of attention. Nothing like stirring up family conversations. And so, again, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I was hoping no one would, but no. No, I actually, I was hoping someone would, because I think, like a lot of statements, if we don't unpack them, it may lead us down a path that wasn't intended by the one communicating. So I've had both sides sending me, wow, best thing I've ever heard. And I've also had said those, what is wrong with you, Pastor? And so, separate love from morality. For God so loved the world. What I said last week, if you tie love to morality, there is no place for you in salvation. That ultimately, in order for grace to be grace, there are no strings attached. Now, we need to unpack this. I've had conversations with those people dear to me and who've said, Pastor, I know God doesn't have different levels of sin, but I do. I'm not talking about your levels of sin. I'm talking about the fact that when Paul says none are saved by the law, it means none. So love and morality, unfortunately, oftentimes when we start with and tie those two closely together, we think about Christianity are good people. That's not an appropriate understanding of Christianity. And it's absolutely a misrepresentation of the gospel. Because the gospel, love, is separate from morality. It's because of our lack of morality that God sent his son. Now, I'm going to go to the next step, but before I leave that one, is there a follow-up question by Bruce or anyone else about that statement, that love must be separate from morality in that regard? For by grace you've been saved. By faith. It is a gift of God, not by works, so no one can boast. Grace cannot be tied to works. Do you have a follow-up to that part of it? I think we could close. I've gotten Bruce's approval. The other, well, does anybody else have a follow-up? Do you have a follow-up to that side of it, Mary? All right, bring Mary, let's make sure, because we've got to get to the other side of this one. Last week, I was so pleased that the Bible verses lined up this way, because ironically, John 3:16 and Ephesians 2:8-9 are really, really, in many ways, build on each other. Go ahead, Mary.
Well,
who are you?
Mary Moore.
Hi, Mary.
I was just looking back at the epistle reading from last week, the love chapter.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you sit back and you think that this is used in weddings, but truth be told, if you really read it, it's a definition of God.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so thank you for that statement question. Actually in the early church fathers would encourage people to substitute the word for love, Jesus. Jesus is patient. Jesus is kind. Jesus does not envy. Now, I share that with you because this has been wrestled with for a long time. Now, the fact is, love does express itself in morality. Now, did we hear that? Love expresses itself. And I am so glad Mary spoke, because love expresses itself not in things to do and not to do, but love expresses itself because of the character of God. Love is nothing more than being children of the God who is love. So when you're a child of a perfect God, and this is love, then you start to, how does God show his love? Well, for God so loved the world that he gave. Last week we talked about love will always give. Love is always going to have an expression. But it's not I would tell you it's an expression of the character of God. And here's where, again, we get in trouble. Because we think of morality, and we make the jump that it's the character of God. And you cannot do that anymore. Our culture does not equate morality with God. In fact, our culture is going through on so many levels. The political level, it is absolutely happening. It's happening on the socio-academic level. And that is, how do you determine morality? Is there an object or objective source for determining morality? And so you'll start to hear more and more from people about community values, defining morality. So that community doesn't want to have pornographic sites right nearby the schools, but this other community, I just watched an interview with Richard Gere because I happened to, the game was getting boring first half, so I just watched Pretty Women for a while. And then while I decided, I am telling you, I am truly schizophrenic or whatever, because I now pulled out my thing and watched an interview of Richard Gere and what's her name? Julia Roberts. And the interview on Today said, well, Richard Gere goes, I can't believe, people let their children watch this. It's about a prostitute. And then the person from the Today Show says, really? Where do you live? Parents want their children to watch this. Now, there you have it. Community values. Values are now being defined, and this is what it's going to be hard as a nation. Because our nation, again, you might say, well, you're going to say it again, aren't you? I am. Separate morality from God, not for us, but for the world. Because the world is already there. And if you start talking about morality and immediately equating it to God, first of all, they're wondering, which will bring us into the conversation, Jesus gets us. It doesn't line up real well with my understanding of the Bible. On some things, but it goes to places that we have to be careful. I told you it's super messaging, and it has a place for a good, healthy conversation. But don't assume that's why they don't identify with any church. They are not going to necessarily hold to the Lutheran Church confession of the Bible. And so Jesus gets us as, if you will, it's some person's version of Christianity. I brought it up last week because I'm telling you, this is what our children, our grandchildren, our friends are learning about Christianity from TV. Just like love has no labels. One of our online people sent me a beautiful note and said, Pastor, thank you for saying what you said. Our experience has been churches are not very friendly to people who are homosexual. Thank you for acknowledging that love is love. Now, I can tell you these conversations, if they're not going on in your family now, I don't know why, because it's going on in your friends, it's going on in your neighbors, it's going on people all over. People have loved ones that are making choices in life that are not consistent. But I don't know what choices they're making, but of the way God created. But guess what? Did I not say sin is sin? And did I not say that, You know, in God's eyes, a pornography addiction is no different than homosexuality. Lusting is no different than being transgender. And if you don't agree with me, you need to put your hand up or set up a time to talk with me. Because I am telling you, from God's perspective, sin is sin. And if you question that, then why is this sin set in line with a whole bunch of other sins I never hear church people talking about? You don't talk about, you know, that person slanders. You know, we probably shouldn't have them around this church. It's, you know, that person slanders. By the way, that's in the list. Did you know that person is an absolute glutton? That's on the list too. So before we start, we have in our country right now, we have a preoccupation. My God bless him, my doctor when I was, and our director of our hospice, when I was a hospice chaplain in California 30 years ago, said to me, he's Jewish, he said, our country right now has a preoccupation with sexuality, and it's going to keep on going through your years. You better get ready for it, Pastor. And so this is where we're at. We have kind of picked which sins are worse than other. If someone gets divorced, it's sin. If people don't get divorced and live the way they're living, we're all broken. Now, the reason I wanted us to watch these is because not only is it because our people are seeing this, is because there are some very, very healthy, appropriate teaching. I have been all over that Love Has No Labels, and there are a website, and there are some very, very helpful resources for people to be able to wrestle with these things. I wrestle with them, trying to figure out, you know, how do we talk with people that are different than we are? And I'm not just talking about any one difference. I'm talking about how do we listen to people who have different belief systems, who have different cultural values. That was, you know, that was the intent of the conversation last week. I hope we can continue it. It's such an important one. Again, some of you have been around here, have heard me say, ministry ought to be, what are the 3 R's? Real, and relevant. I go in a different order, and I'm German, so I have to do it. Real, relevant, and relational. Real, relevant, and relational. That life is real. The scriptures are real, they're relevant, and they're relational. So let's go into the struggle. And today we are probably going to continue these conversations with, again, another verse from the Lord. I want you to, in your group, talk about, I've little heads up here. How many of you have heard the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Okay, I ask that. Don't anybody pull out their phone. I want you to talk about it from where you're at right now. How does the phrase, pull up your bootstraps, fit with the phrase, you are saved by grace? Go ahead, have at it, and I'll be back with you. How does the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, fit with the phrase, you're saved by grace? All right, about one more minute. All right, let's bring it up. So I told you I didn't want you to do the etymology of pulled up by one's bootstraps, but I did. I did it actually earlier in the week when I called the guy who wrote the song that we're using for John Stenfeld, who wrote the song we sang with this Bible verse today. And he said in Texas, where he pastors, this is not only a common phrase, but it is actually a very common approach to life. So how many of us would say we've oftentimes either heard it or said it? We think we know what it means, right? Most of us? Yeah, certainly heard it. So what was shocking is when he told me, he said, you ought to go look at the background of it. He didn't tell me anything because when I called him, by the way, he and his wife were on a cruise. I'm like, dude, why in the world are you picking up the phone? I went to college with him, and that's why he probably was. I don't know. So do you know that this word has its background in the England, but as it came over to the United States in the 1800s, and I'm going to read it from here, in original use, often used to refer pulling oneself over a fence and implying that someone is attempting or has claimed some ludicrously far-fetched or impossible task. The whole idea in its origins was almost a statement of sarcasm, mockery, because, and by the way, these are tied to the way boots were, and boots had straps on them that to pull yourself up was considered impossible. It was a way of helping people have a reality check. Now, some of us have gone with the newer version. The newer version is part of the Protestant work ethic. Do you know what the Protestant work ethic is? Get up, go to work, keep your nose clean, and God will bless you. No, that is a very, very, I mean, this is the prevailing, it's what your mom said? Yeah, it's what my dad said, and he usually had something in his hand when he said it. No, I bring this to you because I'm not saying that they're necessarily opposed to each other, per se, as being one being right and one being wrong. What I'm telling you is, in its origin, it was a way of giving people a reality check that you can't do this. You know, when you're dead, you're dead. You're lying on a field with all of the garb of a football player and a helmet, and your heart stops. Do you think you're going to be able to jump up and get after it? No. And by the way, I've been following Damar, and I would encourage you, what a beautiful Christian family. You know, I told Kevin, if you want to help people to kind of wrestle with, there's more going on than you probably think, try that one. I mean, those of us watching on TV had no idea. Can you imagine everything that was happening? I mean, behind that wall of people. But there was even more going on, because not only you had the medical people there, you had, actually, they have said how that all happened. It was like a miracle. He claims it as a miracle that God gave him new life. Now, one says this is pull yourself up by your bootstraps is ludicrous. How does that jive with grace? Pretty well, doesn't it? That kind of understanding of pull oneself up by your bootstraps fits real well with grace. Paul makes sure you hear it clearly in our Bible verse, which we're going to do our best to memorize. What in the Bible verse do you think kind of shows that this is ludicrous to think you can do it yourself? What in the verse? You got it in front of you. What's the verse? It's not your own doing. So no one can boast. It is, surely you didn't say it's up to you. No. Okay. It's up to him. It's God, right? It's all God. Now, I share this with you because this is, I'm going to just read from what I thought was a rather helpful, this was written in the 1800s by a Christian theologian. Here are three of the key words of the New Testament. Here are the three key words of the New Testament. Grace, saved, faith. Once these terms were strange and new. Now they are old and threadbare. Once they were like lava glowing and cast up from the central depths, but it is a long while since eruption, and the blocks have got cold, and the corners have rubbed off them. I'm afraid that some people, when they read such a text, Ephesians 2:8-9, will shrug the shoulder of weariness and think that they're in for a dreary sermon. Now, I say this was written in the 1800s in this country. If for you those three words, grace, saved, faith, are like as common as water, fire, and air, there's a problem. It's a big problem. You do not understand where much of the world, in fact, I'm going to go on record as saying most of the world is, and increasingly more of the United States. What you consider as common as water, fire, and air is not considered common for people who do not really understand Christianity. They may have even heard about Jesus. Though, if you remember, the gal from India Transformed said, you go to India, nobody's heard of Jesus. They haven't even heard of the person. The concept of grace is foreign. The notion of grace, of something being outside of yourself to have a connection with a divine being is foreign, because religions have been around and recycled for hundreds, thousands of years. And all the religions have a position that says you got to do in order to receive. And we could go through it, and I could show you in the different world religions. And by the way, that's why oftentimes you'll find profoundly moral people who are attracted to these religions. Conversely, again, we just have to be honest. If grace, faith, and saved are like water, wind, and rain, then do we actually really understand the significance of those in our practical, real, relevant, relational lives? Because Paul wants us to. And he is coming at this one with a hammer. And I'm going to take some time and walk you through, like I did last week, some of those words. So here's your chance to get into the Greek with me for a moment. Okay, is the first one soso menoi? Is that the first one? Is that it? It starts with an S? Okay, you have been saved. So this is an interesting word. First of all, it's an interesting word that needs to start from the premise of desperation. I am done. If you, I don't, where am I, have I got the wrong one? Do we have any more of these? Oh, we do have more. They're all right over there on the chair. We've got plenty more. Go grab some. Yeah, thank you. So this word speaks about being in such danger that you are pretty much not counting on anything except for destruction. Now, for me, that's what I experienced that Monday night, watching that game. Did anybody else watch that game start to think that, my goodness, this kid's dead? You did? Did you happen to, if you were watching, sense that the announcers thought, this kid's dead, this is terrible? Did you kind of sense this almost like common begging? Did anybody else pick up on we've got to pray? This sense of, this is serious, everybody. We've got to, I don't care. In fact, I heard one guy say, I don't care what your faith is, please pray. Yes, John, let's get a microphone there for you, John. Yeah, we got to.
Knowing how the
put it up to your mouth, it won't make a difference.
knowing how the group that was in attendance, as far as the fan base, and how excited they were, and from the start of the game, before the game, and then everything just quieted down. But I think one thing that really had us leaning in the direction of this is really, very serious, is seeing the players down on their knees.
Yeah.
Bent over.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I was a little boy, but I was watching the football game between the Detroit Tigers and the Chicago Bears when the fella died on the field. Detroit Lions. Did I say the Tigers? Oh, yeah. Well, it's a Detroit team. I mean, my goodness. Sorry, Kevin. So, anybody else watching that game on TV that day? I did as a boy. No one else. Well, so I remember it. It was horrible as a child watching that game on television when the Lions player actually died, I believe, died on the field, if not shortly thereafter. My point is, this is the word, saved. This is like, you'll do anything to get some sort of being freed. That's the word. And what's interesting is the word is it's only used twice in the New Testament. It's used here and in verse 5. Look at, if you got your Bible open, Ephesians 2, verse 5. And it's a perfect participle, passive and plural. Perfect participle, passive, plural. And you say, what? Who cares, Pastor? Actually, these are things that have significance because what that means is this is an action that took place in the past, but has ongoing consequence. And you say, well, what's the significance here? So notice it says, you have been saved, right? It was an action in the past, God's act of saving you, that has ongoing consequence. This fits real nicely with our understanding of worship, by the way. This fits real nicely with our understanding of the Lord's Supper, by the way. Because every time we come to the table, it's like we're being saved again. Have you thought about communion that way? That every time you come to communion, today, what was the opening hymn as you were walking up? See, Steve, they don't care. It was just as I am. Just as I am. And you say, wow. Well, look how, again, the saving, I can go up to the table, no matter what's gone on in my thinking, my speaking, my doing, just as I am, and I'm being saved again today. Do you see that? That's not just kind of theory. That is the word they used, that Paul used. That it is a perfect participle passive, plural, you all, is you've been saved, and it is an ongoing. This is why work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Well, God's the one who saved it, but we're going to if you're not wrestling with it, then by the way, you're the wind, fire, and water person. And you are not going to be very helpful with unchurched people. You talk about being baptized and confirmed in the Missouri Synod, and guess what? Nobody cares, including Jesus. And I mean it. Nobody cares, including Jesus. Jesus wants to know, where are you at today? And the fact is, today you're saved. And it's a wonderful word. And unless we get that, we will not have the posture to understand how much of a brick upside the head Paul is intending when he says these other things. It starts with, you've been saved. And living each morning with the notion that, my goodness, I've been saved again. Saved for another day. I've got another day to live it out. That is what Paul's getting at. Any questions about this word? Interesting, the Greek, go over to Laura, she's got her hand up. The Greek here is a root of tied to the word for savior and salvation. Laura, meet him up, please.
Would you go back up, please, and address even when we were dead, he made us alive?
Yep. So if you go back, she's now in about verse, what is that, 4? 5. Okay, so go to verse 5. Thank you for grabbing it. If you look at this, it says here, but God, in being rich in mercy, verse 4, because of the great love which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive. This is what, Damar experienced physically. So what Paul is saying is, there is no way we can save ourselves from sin. In fact, Luther said, how do you know when you've accomplished enough? If you're a person who functions off of a scale, well, I've done more good things than bad. According to who? Maybe ask your spouse, or your children, or your enemies, or God. If you function off of a scale mentality, which is, by the way, we are left to function with if we are going to hold to this other path of the law. And this is why you see people become remarkably, by the end of their life, if they believe in the supernatural, their only hope is, I've done enough. But Paul says, you're dead. Do whatever you want, you're dead. You do not have a chance of being saved by yourself. Does that help? All right. So going back here to this word, the next word that we're going to look at, the word is dia. Contessa, that's the same pronunciation as your mama. Oh, Dia she was here a little bit ago. She's in there. So dia. So the word dia is used all over the Bible. Unlike the one we just said, it's twice. This word, though, can be used for on account of, by. I intentionally took the word through here. And the reason is because here's where, all right, how does this verse start out? What, you got it in front of you? You're starting to memorize it? What's it say? For you are saved by grace through faith. The word through, interesting word. Again, its etymology is back and forth. How many of you remember when you used to build blanket, what do we call those crazy things? Forts, blanket forts. And do you remember how you would, in the house, if you had a big room and mom's gone, you took the blankets. And you would take the cushions off the couch and you'd have this little intricate path from one side of the bedroom, the family room to the other, remember? And you would go from one to the other and you travel through there, right? That's the word through, dia. It's the path. And what's profound here is that grace is this, I use the acronym God's riches at Christ's expense. Through, faith becomes the path that God has laid down, and he has given us the way. It's his path. He's created it. He gives it. And so this notion of dia, we get the word in English, diameter. So what's the diameter? John, you're an old teacher. What's the diameter of something? Talk to Sandy. It's the line from one side to the other, right? Versus the circumference. It's the line through it. That's diameter. Dia. Okay? So let's go to the next word, unless, again, I'm going to keep us moving. I think it's pisteos. Actually, I put the accent on the wrong floor. I think that's the one, isn't it? Yep. Okay. So faith. Again, this is one of those that I thought was really helpful, a little quote. And I'm going to read the quote. And so you can listen up, please. Belief and faith are not exactly equivalent terms. So belief and faith. Your faith has made you well. Faith was still his gift, Ephesians 2:8-9. Any gift, however, once received, becomes the possession of the recipient. Faith, however, is always from God and is purely his work. Someone have their Bible, look up while I'm reading, 2 Thessalonians 1:11. So 2 Thessalonians 1:11. The Greek definite article is uniformly used. The article is like the, or an article. is uniformly used in the expressions your faith, their faith, which occurs 30 times in the Greek New Testament. This, God bless you, genitive construction means its ownership, refers to the principle of faith operating in you. It's not your faith in the sense that it's generated by you, but rather it's the faith that's at work in you, the operating principle of faith. So, and again, I'm going to give you, someone pull up Philippians 2:17. Philippians 2:17, and then 2 Peter 1:5. We need those passages like right now. Who's got the, so 2 Peter 1:5, Philippians 2:17. Who's got the 2 Thessalonians 1:11? Put your hand up, because I don't have time to look them up. Who's got it? All right, right over here. Good. No, do you see John right there? Oh, you're getting to him. Okay.
2 Thessalonians 1:11 is, to this end, we always pray for you, that our God may make you worthy of his calling and may fulfill every resolve for good and every work of faith by his power.
All right, so do you see there? It's his calling. It's all the work he is doing. It's that he might accomplish this in faith. All right? Be who you've been created to be. That's really what he's saying there. Who's got the 2 Peter 1:5? Anybody have that one? Okay, up here. Kathy Bestie, because we need you to walk. So walk quickly. Someone look up Philippians 2:17, please. Philippians 2:17. All right, Kathy.
For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue and virtue with knowledge.
Okay, and so if you look right before that, could you read the verse right before that? I'll help everybody, and put that mic a little closer.
4.
Well, you're in Philippians, which one are you?
I'm in 2 Peter
2 Peter?
1, verse 5.
Yeah, read verse 4. Read where it starts out.
By which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desire.
And keep reading.
For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue and virtue with knowledge.
So what's being said here? What's being said is you've been given faith, supplement it with virtue and knowledge. By the way, I kind of like that, because do you see, virtue has to do with character and behavior, knowledge, what we know and put into, I'd have to look at what Greek words there is used, but good. Who's got the other one? What's the other one? Philippians 2:17. Who's got it? Oh, okay, go over here to Joe. Hey, by the way, it's been a while. I just thought about how long it's been since you've been able to be in. Everybody, will you welcome Joe back? Man, she has been battling, golly, she has had so many challenges, and thank you for being a good partner there, dude.
I had a lot of blessings too,
Yeah.
right along with.
Roger, you're a good hubby.
Okay. Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all.
Good. So Philippians 2:17. Even if I am to be poured out, and could you read it one more time? I just want to get the last.
Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, again, we said that these three words, grace, faith, and salvation, can become worn out words. And what Paul is trying to help us see is that actually these words can have relevance in everyday life. And they can be the basis for our decisions, the basis for our character, the basis for how we interact with other people in our relationships. And I'm going to go back to what we talked about. How do you treat people who think differently than you? How do you treat people who have different values than you? How do you handle yourself with people who look different? They're just different. And what I want you to know is that right now, we are in an uphill climb because oftentimes the missteps of Christianity are what get the media. That's what's being shown. And I keep getting these nice reality checks from my friends out west who tell me, hey, this is what people think of Christians. And I keep saying, but that's not what the people are like at our church. But I want you to understand, this is we have got to work hard, over hard, to help people see that Christians start first with love. This is how they will know you are my disciples. Not if you do the right thing, not if you teach the right thing, not if you police the right thing. This is how they will know you are my disciples, if you love one another. And this is the call of the Christian life. It doesn't mean that morality isn't important. It's important to God. Let God handle it. All right. See, which one? Did we get through them all? Oh, no. Doron, man, we don't have time. We're going to lose here. All right. Let me just give you. So the reason I picked this word is there's normally in the Greek, the word charis is used for gift, which is tied to the word grace. This is one of the few times the word doron is used. And there's something interesting about this word. And that is, this word was oftentimes given as something that is a free gift, but it's to honor somebody. Now think about God giving us faith, not because we're honorable, but to honor us. And then think about what Peter said. Anybody remember what he said in 1 Peter 2? You are you got it, Alan? What is it? You got it. Royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God. So now we understand why, to finish off, he says this word,aux kestetai, is to boast, is so the Greek word here, again, is it's used about 35 times by Paul, twice by James. It's actually to glory, and Pastor picked up on this in his sermon. So really, again, we're going to try to memorize it appropriately. For by grace you've been saved through faith, and this is not of your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may. It's really glory. Now, it can be translated boast. But here's the thing. The notion of glorying actually had something about how you physically, do you know how people, what, when someone was glorying in themselves, do you know what, there was a physical activity tied to it. Anybody guess? Chin up. Let's go back around to that. Pulling oneself up. Anybody starting to see some correlations here? Keep your chin up. Stiff upper. Now, I am not trying to undermine everything you've been taught about life, because there are a lot of good life lessons about how we live in our relationships and how we relate with ourselves. But some of it can be very antithetical to the Christian life. Actually, keep glorying in yourself doing this. Do you know what this does to other people? Because what do they think you're doing? Looking down your... This is contrary to the Christian posture. The Christian posture is one that doesn't look down the nose. If there was anybody that could have and deserved to look down, it should have been Jesus. Find the training for all of us, it's training for all of us, to find ourselves in relationships with people in our way we posture ourselves, that they do not feel like we are. And for goodness sake, in relationship to God, it's almost ludicrous. Now, in that spirit, I told you, golly, sometimes I just think to myself, I just can't wait to retire so I won't make so many mistakes publicly. No, I'm telling you, it's just, it's embarrassing to be me. That old phrase, sucks to be me. You know, last week we were talking, and I made a statement, and I called. Where did John go? There he is. Didn't I call you on Monday morning or Sunday afternoon? I don't know. Remember, John? And I called you and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I hope I didn't offend you when I made some flippant comment."
I said, "What did you say?"
But other people heard it. And I was not somehow disclosing something that's going on in John's life that all the rest of you now need to pray for him. No, but rather I was just, but it was not appropriate. It was not professional at the very least. And if you're a person that's scratching your head and saying, "Oh, what did he say?" Well, talk to John. Because John and I have known each other for 30 years. You know, John and I have known each other for 30 years. I knew him back in Wisconsin. And when you have history with people, and, you know, we've kind of teased about a bit, and yet, you know, teasing in private's different than teasing in public. And so, yes, Pat.
I just want to say I thank you so much for naming your church in Wisconsin after me.
Yeah. St. John's, right? That's right, yeah. Well, that would have been Sinner John, but no. Oh, I did it again. Doggone, I cannot. I just can't help myself. Yeah, no, you are a saint and a sinner. But let's, this is good, hard work. We're going to keep doing it together. Get in your car and get out of the parking lot so new people can come in. Let's pray the family prayer. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.